Hey, I'm going to talk to you about Fantasia 2000 and why this movie represents Disney, the Walt Disney Company, spending $100 million to make a very annoying rich person happy and distracted and make him go away and get him off your back. I'll tell you all about that as we go. If you grew up in the VHS era of the 90s, and the demographics on this YouTube channel suggest that you did grow up in this era, you were familiar with the clamshell Disney VHS boxes, and you might have been familiar with the Fantasia VHS clamshell, and you thought, hey, that looks cool as hell. And then you watch and you realize, oh no, this is just a bunch of boring musical crap. That was my experience anyway. Then you get a little older, you watch it and you're like, oh, okay, yes, this is important and beautiful and I appreciate it. I get it. People, get off my back. So they had that movie. It's an all-time classic, right? They made a sequel for Y2K, Fantasia 2000. It had been in development for a long, long time. And what I find most interesting about this story is that every single person involved in the development of Fantasia 2000 knew it was a bad idea. This is not going to work. Everyone except for one person, because that one person was Roy E. Disney, the nephew of Walt Disney, a major power player, a major power broker in the Walt Disney Company. But we're going to get to Roy in a minute. We have to start with the original Fantasia. In the 1930s, Disney Studios, its bread and butter was animated short films that played before feature films in movie theaters. This is how the world came to know and love Mickey Mouse. Another series of films they had was called Silly Symphonies. This was color cartoons set to pieces of music. Sometimes the music was pre-existing, sometimes the music was written for the short. As the decade went on, plans were being made to have Mickey Mouse star in a silly symphony set to The Sorcerer's Apprentice. This is a piece of music from 1897 by the French composer Paul Dukas, which itself was based on a 1797 poem by German writer Goethe. Now, at the same time as they're doing this silly symphony, Sorcerer's Apprentice thing, Walt Disney himself is banking the entire future of his studio and his company on making the very first feature-length animated movie ever produced in America. And it succeeded. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was an unprecedented hit. It became the biggest American movie of all time up to that moment in 1938. In fact, if you adjust its box office for inflation, it remains to this day the biggest animated movie ever made. Now, to follow up Snow White, the studio made Pinocchio, which I consider personally the greatest American animated movie ever made. It's considered an all-time classic now, but it was a very big disappointment at the box office at the time. So at the same time as this is happening and feature animation is becoming the dominant force of the movie studio, the studio is still churning out shorts. Work continued on The Sorcerer's Apprentice shorts, but costs were running very high. And so it was clear this short is not going to make its money back at the box office. What are we going to do with Mickey Mouse and The Sorcerer's Apprentice? Walt Disney, he was not deterred by the disappointment of Pinocchio. He became obsessed with this idea. Let's use The Sorcerer's Apprentice as part of a bigger package of animated shorts. We'll package it all into a feature film set to classical music. Now that itself seems like an iffy enough proposition, but Walt Disney, talking about the man Walt Disney, not the company, he was experiencing an affliction common to successful business psychos, simultaneously convinced he could disrupt and transform the industry he works in, and extremely insecure about what people think of him. Afraid people don't take him seriously. I mean, his job was he made cartoons for kids. That's not serious stuff. But if he can make something important, something about classical music, if I can inspire the kids of the world to learn to love and appreciate classical music, then they'll have to take me seriously. If those blue-collar slobs who go watch my movies, if they hear some damn music for once, maybe they'll start becoming serious people. But this wouldn't just be a movie. It would be a traveling roadshow. It would play in one city at a time, then move on to another city, be a touring event, a huge event wherever it went. And yeah, these cartoons that currently make up Fantasia, they're going to get replaced by new cartoons. Fantasia's never going to end. It's not a movie. It's an ongoing, eternal experience that's going to outlive us all. Movie theaters, though, they would have to specially install this very expensive sound equipment to play Fantasia. They called it Fantasound. This was a precursor to surround sound, but because it was so expensive, this really, really limited the appeal of Fantasia. Fantasia is often called a bomb, but it seems like that's not actually true. It was pretty successful in theaters in the traveling roadshow days, but it went up against that pesky World War that was going on at the time. it would get re-released and its sound would be remixed into mono, which every movie theater had. And then it became a very successful movie. So it is kind of a misnomer to say that Fantasia was a huge bomb, but it wasn't a Snow White hit. And if Disney had big, wider artistic aspirations, he had to set them aside. His next movie that he made was Dumbo. It was a much more modest movie about a cute elephant. It was a hit. Everyone liked it. So go back to making your cartoons, cartoon boy. Okay. You're not a music guy. Leave that to us, the smart people. Now, if you've never seen Fantasia, I don't know that I can actually recommend you sit down and watch it from beginning to end, because it is a very odd and disjointed experience. Every sequence gets introduced by the most uncharismatic man you've ever seen. His name is Deems Taylor. He is a music critic, and he just dryly tells you what you are about to witness and why the music you're going to hear is very important. But I'm sure that seeing it on a huge screen with the Fantasound, that would have been an entirely different experience. And the people who actually made Fantasia would say, if you've seen it on home video, you've never actually seen Fantasia. But the animated sequences themselves are some of the greatest bits of animation you will ever see. So you absolutely should see it if you care about animation. It's some of the best animation ever made. Now let's fast forward several decades. Walt Disney dies in 1966, and the company enters a period of aimlessness as it searches for a successor. So Walt has a nephew named Roy E. Disney, son of Roy O. Disney, Walt's business partner, and Roy E. Disney is a very wealthy man because of his father and his family connections, and he's an important power player behind the scenes, especially within the company's animation division. But the most important role he serves is he's on the board of directors. And in 1984, he organizes a board coup against the company's current CEO, Ron Miller, and has him replaced with Michael Eisner. So in exchange for getting Eisner the job, Roy wanted a job of his own. He wanted an official role within the animation department, so he was named chairman of the animation division. The credit or lack of credit that Roy deserves for the turnaround the Disney animation experience during this time, the Disney Renaissance, this gets debated. There are people who say he did absolutely nothing. People who said, no, he was very talented and creative and he does deserve credit. I'm reluctant to give a big old Nepo baby who literally owns a castle. I'm reluctant to give somebody like that any credit, but it's besides the point. The point is, Michael Eisner was the CEO of Disney, and crucially, he owed Roy Disney a debt, a tremendous debt, because he had gotten him his job. And so he operated for the 20 years or so that he was CEO. He operated with the assumption, I need to make that guy happy. I need to keep that guy pleased. Now, there was a very specific thing that Roy wanted to do. There was something Roy requested to keep him happy. He wanted to fulfill his Uncle Walt's ambition of making Fantasia an ongoing project. He wanted to make a sequel to Fantasia. Now, when your obscenely wealthy benefactor tells you he has an idea, the only thing you're allowed to say is, great idea, boss. And that's exactly what Eisner did. The studio indulges him, lets him develop Fantasia, the sequel to Fantasia. It takes about 15 years for it to happen, but they let him do it. So I'm kind of saying this is like this Fantasia 2000 is Trump's ballroom. That's basically what I'm saying. It's the Trump's ballroom of Disney movies. As the Disney Renaissance goes on in the late 80s and early 90s, Michael Eisner's relationship with Roy starts to fray a little bit because Eisner is being credited as the genius, the guiding voice behind one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in American history. He's the genius who saved Disney, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King. Wow, Michael Eisner's the CEO of all of it. But as all of this is going on, Roy is singularly focused on Fantasia 2000. All those other movies, that's kid shit. This is real. This is the real stuff, Fantasia. This is what it's actually about. But everyone at Disney knows this is a bad idea. Nobody wants this. Kids aren't going to be into this. Nobody's going to want to go see Fantasia 2000. The kids these days, they want to see the lions maul each other. They don't want lions prancing around to classical music. But Roy, because of his position on the Disney board, he has to be appeased. Now, remember what I said about Walt Disney, about the thing that happens to these business psychos once they get successful. They begin to think all of their ideas are good. Like, I'm like actually a genius if you think about it. And Michael Eisner certainly fell prey to this disease. He always kind of positioned himself as like, I'm really a creator. I'm really more of a creative storyteller. All this business stuff, this CEOing that I do, that's just this is like my day job. I'm really a storyteller. So he wanted to put his own creative stamp on Fantasia 2000. The first idea he had was, instead of classical music, let's do Beatles songs. But Roy Disney was born in 1930, so he was too old for the Beatles. He's like, no, those bad boys with their mop top haircuts. No, they have no place near Fantasia. So Eisner then moved on to a truly stupid idea. And I'm going to now read from James B. Stewart's incredible book, Disney War. Quote, after a trip to his son Eric's high school graduation, Eisner insisted that Edward Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance be one of the compositions featured in a segment. Everyone can relate to Pomp and Circumstance, he said at a meeting with Roy and the animators, noting that he'd just heard it at his son's graduation. Roy said nothing, but everyone could tell from the strained look on his face that he didn't like the idea. Eisner proceeded to outline a plot for the segment. All the classic Disney heroes and heroines, Cinderella and Prince Charming, Ariel and Eric, march in a wedding procession carrying their future babies, which they would present in a ceremony. There was dead silence in the room. Okay, Roy finally said, with notably little enthusiasm. When Eisner left, the animators were in an uproar. Pomp and Circumstance might have been classic graduation music, but the animators, and many critics, deemed it mediocre even by Elgar standards. Roy hated the idea, and showing the hallowed Disney characters as married with babies implied they had engaged in sex. The very thought was unsettling. Still, Roy reluctantly concluded they would have to try to implement Eisner's idea. End quote. The animation staff really does not want to do this wedding thing, the wedding with the baby procession. So Roy eventually has to tell Eisner it's a no-go. We're not going to do that. And Eisner's compromise is, okay, you don't have to do the wedding, but you have to use Pomp and Circumstance, the goddamn graduation song that stays in the movie. So in the final version of the movie, you have Donald Duck as Noah from the Bible, shuffling animals onto the Ark. This is the Noah's Ark story with Donald Duck set to the graduation music. Fantasia 2000, it finally comes out in theaters, first in a limited IMAX run beginning in January of 2000. This has the distinction, Fantasia 2000 does, of being the first ever Hollywood-produced movie to play on IMAX screens. If you grew up in the 90s, you remember IMAX as IMAX theaters is the place you would go on school field trips and you'd watch a 40-minute documentary about a mountain or like the ocean. That's what IMAX meant at the time. Then there's a Disney movie you can see. But the company goes all out to indulge its extremely powerful board member. They do marketing blitz. They host very exclusive black tie galas for these screenings, for these premiere screenings that they hold all over the world. They have live orchestras present to play the music. And the movie eventually gets a wide release in the summer of 2000, and it would go on to make $91 million at the box office on a reported budget of $85 million. But the marketing and the overhead costs and all those orchestras has surely made it much, much higher. But this was always Roy's folly. It was not designed to do anything other than keep him busy and keep him pleased. And with Fantasia 2000 and Dinosaur being the two big Disney animated movies of that year, it was clear the Disney Renaissance is over. It ended last year with Tarzan, definitively. We're done with that. But like Fantasia 2000, is it good? Is it a good movie? And the answer to that is like, I mean, what do you mean by good? Like, and what do you mean by movie? Because like a lot of the animation in it is quite wonderful. And now that we know that the pillow was about to be put on the head of hand-drawn animation, it's even more special now. You don't get to see that much more hand-drawn animation out of Disney. So any of it that you get from this era does feel a little special. There's some really great stuff in this movie. The sequence set to George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue, it's in the style of Al Hirschfeld's caricatures. This sequence is incredible. Directed by Eric Goldberg, one of the great animators of all time. He's the guy who animated the genie. That alone makes it special. That alone is reason enough to watch the movie. And, you know, I even like the stupid Donald Duck Noah's Ark thing. Is this a good movie? Does that mean you should watch it? Like, you probably shouldn't watch it, honestly. I don't think you're going to enjoy it. Again, it's the Donald Trump's ballroom of movies. But here's the thing about that. That's good. If we have to live in a world that has billionaires, and we shouldn't have to live in that world, we should not have billionaires. But as long as we have billionaires, I would so much rather this be how they spend their time, their money, their resources, their power on, is making stupid movies that nobody wants, building weird stuff that everybody's going to hate, distracting them from the evil stuff that billionaires normally want to do. So Fantasia 2000 is basically the most expensive set of toy car keys dangled in front of a 60-year-old man to keep him distracted. And that makes it kind of special. Okay, if you have made it all the way to the end of this video, I think you would really enjoy my podcast 1 Week Rental. So just subscribe to the YouTube channel that you're watching right now. We have a 2-hour episode that comes out every Friday. We have conversations just like this, give you the behind the scenes history of a movie, and then discuss and review the movie using what we just learned to inform our take on the movie. 1 week rental. Subscribe here on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much.